John here from Great Lakes Country with another outdoor cast iron cooking video. An absolute heap of eggs, meat, cheese, and hash browns layered atop a bed of country biscuits cooked in an old-fashioned Dutch oven to become the most delicious, hearty Mountain Man Breakfast Casserole you've ever seen. I absolutely love breakfast, and there is nothing quite as magical as cooking breakfast out here in the woods. Coffee on a cool, crisp morning next to the fire, the smell of bacon sizzling away on hot cast iron. And because it is breakfast time bright and early here in northern Michigan, we're making something extra special today. You may have heard of a Mountain Man breakfast or a breakfast casserole or a cowboy camp breakfast. Well, that's what we're making today, but my breakfast casserole is bigger, better, more mountain manish than all the others. I'm talking about some serious breakfast goodness that will feed an absolute army of hungry campers, cowboys, or yes, mountain men. So let's do it. All right, and we need to start off with our biscuit base. So that pretty much just involves making a batch of biscuits that won't be cut up into individual biscuits, which means we need a couple cups of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, and an entire stick of cold butter. And I could cut this into little bitty cubes, but I'm really a big fan of the grating method. And this is the only little grater that I happen to have here, so I'm gonna make it work. And now I just need to get all of this butter sort of kneaded into the dry ingredients. So the best way is to pretty much use my hands. I could use a pastry cutter, but honestly, the fingers are gonna work a little better today. Just gonna sort of fold and squish all the butter into the flour until I've got little teeny tiny, I guess they say pea-sized pieces, but when you're shredding the butter, you don't necessarily get pea-sized pieces, you just get little bits all in there. All right, that's looking pretty good. And now I'm gonna add in 1 cup of cold milk. Yes, you could also use buttermilk if you prefer. I happen to have regular whole milk on hand. And now we're just gonna start bringing that all together with a fork. Just kind of gently stir it all in until it comes together into kind of a dough. Same way any biscuit is made. And once it's mostly together, just about like that, get a little flour on the surface here. Get all that turned out, and we'll just kind of form this all up, make sure it's in one nice contiguous piece. Now I'm gonna give it a little bit of a roll, best I can, because it's still pretty sticky, because I wanna do a couple of foldovers. That's gonna give us some nice layers to our biscuit. Don't need to do this a lot of times, just a couple. If it's too sticky, we can add a little more flour. I think that looks pretty good to me. So now I just want to roll this out so it's about the diameter of my Dutch oven. We're looking at probably about 8 or 10 inches in diameter. We can form it a little better once it's time to put into the Dutch oven. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Once we put that in a Dutch oven, we can spread it out a little more if we need to. So I'm gonna set this aside, clean up my board, and we're gonna put together the other ingredients for our Cowboy Mountain Man Breakfast Casserole. Okay, next up, a little prep work, starting with about half of a yellow onion. And we're just gonna do a pretty standard dice on our onion today. Nothing too fancy. And we're gonna Mountain Man this thing up a little more. I've got a couple peppers here, a jalapeno and a poblano pepper. Just gonna add a little bit of flavor to our breakfast casserole. I'll just slice my jalapeno down the middle. I do not personally care to keep the seeds, so I usually get most of those out of there. And we're just gonna slice our jalapenos long ways and then just chop them up. And we'll do something similar with our poblano. I'll cut the top off here, kind of core out this seedy, membraney part. And just do pretty much the same thing. Slice long ways and chop. two more things to do before we can start actually building this breakfast casserole. First, we need to cut up our bacon. I've got about half a pound of thick cut bacon here. This is actually some of my bacon that I cured and have had in the freezer. And we're just gonna maybe zip it down long ways, and then we'll chop them up into some little bite-sized pieces. That's looking good. I'll put my bacon pieces aside for just a minute while we get our eggs together. Now our eggs, this Mountain Man casserole calls for an entire dozen eggs. So I'll get those cracked into this bowl. And to our eggs, we're gonna add 1/2 of a cup of half and half, a pinch of salt, pinch of black pepper, and give that all a thorough whisk until we've got a nice scrambled egg mixture. All right, eggs are scrambled. And now we need to move over to the stove to brown our bacon and some breakfast sausage as well. All right, we're gonna get our bacon frying away along with a pound of the finest ground breakfast sausage. And you know how this goes. We're just gonna break up that sausage and move things around until we've got the sausage browned through and the bacon is just starting to become a little crispy. And when that sausage is about halfway browned, we're adding in our onions and that poblano and jalapeno. That all mixed in, and just about the time the sausage is browned, our onions and peppers should have softened, and this will be the most amazing, beautiful filling for a Mountain Man breakfast of champions. All right, and I think we're just about there, and that means that it's time to finally start putting together this breakfast casserole. Okay, so here's our layers. We've got the meat and onion and pepper mixture. We've got our eggs. We've got lots of shredded cheese. Today we're using cheddar jack because that just seems like the right move, and shredded potatoes. And these were just frozen potatoes that I thawed out. Pre-shredded hash browns makes things a lot easier than doing that step myself. Okay, and so here I've got my smallish 10-inch Dutch oven, and that's gonna be the vessel for our casserole today. And I'll start by giving it just a quick smear with some butter. I'll mention that this Dutch oven is not hot, but it's also not freezing cold. It's been slightly warmed just so we're not starting off with an ice cold piece of metal. And remember that biscuit dough that we made a little while ago? That's going into the Dutch oven, and I'm just gonna kind of knead it to make sure it goes all the way to the sides, all the way around. This is gonna be the most delicious base layer for this entire thing. A little golden brown on the bottom is what we're going for, cooked all the way through. Okay, now we're going in with half of that meat and pepper and onion mixture. Just get it all spread around, nice even coating on top of that biscuit. And then some of our shredded pepper jack, about a cup of it. Again, we're just layering here. Now we're doing a layer of some of our shredded hash browns, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 cups. Now we're pouring all of the egg mixture over top, and I'll try to kind of evenly distribute it. Some of it's gonna seep down, mix with those other layers. Just get it all poured over. Now we're going in with the other half of our meat mixture. About another cup of shredded cheese, give or take. Starting to run out of room, so I guess I gotta start thinking about being a little more economical with my layers. Now about as many of these hash browns as I think I can fit on here. And we need a little bit of the melt factor, so you know I have to get a little bit more of that cheese on top. I think that looks about ridiculous enough. So lid is going on, and we're gonna get this thing over by the fire pit and get some coals on it. All right, so I'm gonna get my Dutch oven on my little Dutch oven stand over here. It's a pretty tall stand, so that means I can put a pretty good amount of coals underneath it. Now, because my casserole comes pretty much all the way to the top of this pot, that means I gotta be a little careful with my coals on top. If I get it too hot all at once, I'm gonna risk overcooking that top layer, and it's gonna be way done before all the eggs and everything else deep inside of this casserole are finished cooking. So we're gonna start off pretty light on top. And we're gonna make sure to rotate our lid and the Dutch oven about, I don't know, about every 10 minutes. And we'll check back in on it in a little bit. All right, it's been about 45 to 50 minutes and we are finally done. Look at that reveal. And I was a little worried about how close to the top of the lid that all of that stuff was, but look at how golden and delicious it made all that cheese. I can't wait to cut into this thing. All right, here we go. This thing did have some liquid bubble over a little bit, but I am not worried about that in the least. Wow, that is a great big plate of deliciousness. Look, you can see all the layers in there, the cheese and the meats and the potatoes and the biscuit on the bottom. I guess I can't quite see from this angle, but I assure you it's under there. Look at that. Golden brown, that's what I was looking for. We gotta dig in. All right, here we go. God, this is so much food. I started off with a piece of that biscuit bottom. There's just no telling where you're supposed to start on something like this. And cheesy hash browns with sausage and peppers and some bacon in there. Ah, that's so good. Get some of that brown cheesy top layer with a bunch of egg. I think this is the best one of these that I've ever managed to produce. That cheesy top layer is where it's at. Well, I better end this video here because there's about 16 pounds of this stuff that we have to finish off between us. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all our latest stuff, including future cast iron, Dutch oven, and outdoor cooking videos. And as always, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/Great Lakes Country. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm John, and this is Great Lakes Country.